crime and disaster management. Joint efforts are needed to safeguard stability in the South China Sea and make it a sea of peace, friendship, and
Victor Gao, a chair professor at Soochow University, joins me live now from Beijing. He's also the vice president of the Center for China and Globalization, as well as being a former Chinese diplomat. Victor, thank you so much for coming onto this program. Now, why does China feel that most of the South China Sea is theirs and belongs to them?
Well, allow me to go no further than to the unconditional surrender of Japan at the end of the Second World War. By then, Japan was sitting on top of all the islands, atolls, and reefs in the South China Sea. And at that time, back in 1945, China was the only sovereign country in this part of the world standing on its feet. At that time, there was no countries like Malaysia or Indonesia or Vietnam, etc. They were all colonies by European countries or the United States. Now, when Japan unconditionally surrendered, do you know to whom they surrendered all the islands, isles, and atolls in the South China Sea? They surrendered everything to China, to the Republic of China. Assisted by whom? Assisted by the United States Navy forces. Now, you may remember the boundary of the Philippines was clearly defined in the American-Spanish War towards the end of the 19th century, in the U.S. document delineating all the boundary of the Philippines when the United States was administering the Philippines, and when Japan unconditionally surrendered, the United States took back everything which belonged to the Philippines. Now, to the west of the Philippines, everything was returned not to the United States, but to China. Now, we do not need to go further back into antiquity, but if we look at the situation at the end of the Second World War, when Japan surrendered everything, you will know that China held all the islands, atolls, and reefs in the South China Sea. This should not be grandfathered by whatever that was later adopted into the law of the sea provision. And after all, the United States, even today, has not signed and become a signatory of the law of the sea convention. Let's talk about the apple about apple. Let's really be realistic about the realities on the ground in the South China Sea.
But Victor, some of the realities on the ground is that since 1945, of course, things have changed. Many things have changed. Several countries laying claim to parts of the sea. But how likely do you think are these countries to really rock the boat, so to speak, when so many have Beijing as its biggest trading partner?
Now, first of all, no matter how many countries lay claim to the islands in the South China Sea, they cannot change history. The history is that China was the legitimate owner of the islands, atolls, and reefs in the South China Sea. No, if we trace everything back to the Second World War, when Japan surrendered everything. Now, there are countries, especially certain countries, at the end of the 1970s, they started to raise claims to some of the islands, etc., because of the new oil reserve discovery in the South China Sea. But the Chinese claims and the Chinese sovereign rights to these islands predated any discovery of the oil or gas reserve in the South China Sea. And China's position now is that let's all devote to peaceful use of resources in the South China Sea. And we do not need to, for example, deteriorate into a war of conflict or confrontation. We need to use diplomacy and wisdom to talk about our differences in understanding the legitimacy and the claims about the South China Sea. So there is a better way rather than to really follow militarization strategies and bring foreign forces from thousands of miles away into the South China Sea as if they are claimants to these islands. They are not. They have nothing to do with the islands in the South China Sea. They want to really delegitimate the situation in the South China Sea. And this should be very much exposed and opposed.
And hopefully there will be a diplomatic solution to this rather than a military one. Victor Gao, much appreciate your time. Thank you so much, sir.